Once again, I'm so fortunate to be able to be here through today's sermon. So thank you for this opportunity, and please go with me in prayer now. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your eyes. Amen. So most of you know I spent 25 years in the Air Force. I was a fighter pilot. And I started flying F-4s in the Desert Storm time frame and then transitioned to F-16s for the remainder of my career. Now, being a fighter pilot, as you would expect, is an inherently dangerous job. It's dangerous just flying, but there's so many different challenges that we faced. When we would go out on a normal training sortie, more than likely, we challenge ourselves to become better, to become the pointy end of the spear. You know, and then there's the combat, the challenge of flying combat, you know, that getting shot at part tended to be a little challenging now and then. But there's one challenge that all fighter pilots face on a daily basis, and it's the largest challenge, and it's the challenge of just being so good looking. And being humble, too. All these challenges that we faced as a fighter pilot. Well, so one sortie in particular proved to be challenging. In the early 90s, early to mid-90s, we were stationed in Aviano, Italy. And at one point, our squadron was tasked to fly from Italy to the States for about 6 or 7 week training period. And so when you deploy across the ocean, fighters, of course, we're small, so we need help. We can't make it on our own gas. So a very intricate, ornate, orchestrated game plan would be set up to form a tanker bridge. So that's a bridge, a multiple air-to-air refueling tankers that we would taxi up to and get gas and be able to continue, then pass off to the next tanker to continue to get gas. Now, along the way, it was, you know, we continued to, well, there was some boredom. We just sit there in a little bitty cockpit. But part of the challenge was to continually understand where you were in that process, how much gas you had on board, and if there was an emergency or you couldn't get gas, could you go forward to land at a base, or did you have to turn around? And right dead middle in the ocean, we were constantly cycling on the tanker to be able to have enough gas just in case. So on the sortie, we'd gone from Italy to Spain, and we were marshaling out of Spain to get to a base in Florida. So we took off. I was leading a six aircraft. We took off. We got to our first tanker, and everything was fine. And then we got on to crossing the ocean. Now, at the time in the 90s, weather forecasting wasn't quite what it was today. And so for this sortie, the weather guessers, the weather forecasters, we got the forecast from them, and our whole tanker plan, our gas plan, was dependent on that. So about halfway across the ocean, we realized that we hit a pocket of air where we were facing 160-mile-an-hour winds above what was forecast. And that lasted about 2 hours. Now, if you're flying into a headwind, you're using more gas. I looked down, and it looked like we were going backwards. You use more gas. So we started at that point the process, okay, do we have enough gas? Recalculating, talking with the guys on the tanker. They were talking with the tanker control center to see if we had enough gas, what was the plan, and could we actually make it to our base. And so eventually we got to Nova Scotia, and then we were flying down the East Coast, and about over New York, we realized that the last tanker had enough gas to give all of us a top off, and we were heading off to Florida. So that headwinds, however, put us about an hour and a half, close to 2, behind our originally scheduled land time. So the weather forecasters had briefed, a chance of thunderstorms, but everything should be clear. Now, I called forward, and thunderstorm over the base, sea fog. So about over Alabama, I spread the formation out, and I was going to send in the holding, and I was going to fly down to see if we could actually land. Well, no, the weather was too bad. So now we're all diverting to another base, which after 11 hours tends to be an emergency procedure anyway. So we headed off to a second base, and poof, we exited out of the weather. We were able to go to a second base. We were able to land. And as I taxied in and shut down the aircraft, physically and mentally drained after a 12-and-a-half-hour sortie and had to be just poured out of the cockpit. I was so exhausted. All due to headwinds. All due to the headwinds. What are the headwinds that we face in our lives? We all face headwinds daily, unforecasted headwinds. Daily headwinds like, just sometimes getting up out of bed. That's a challenge, right? A challenge of maybe aches and pains that we deal with on a daily basis. That sometimes it's a challenge just to get to the grocery store. These days, it's a challenge to go to the gas station to fill up your car. I mean, all these daily challenges that we have. But then there are those unforecasted, those unforeseen challenges that come up, like maybe an unexpected medical diagnosis or maybe a death in the family. So all these challenges we deal with in our life, but we know as Christians that God's going to be there every step of the way. Well, but it's hard not to fight the challenge of just gutting it out and going on our own. I'm going to make it through the day. I don't care what. I'm going to make it through the day and meet all those challenges on my own. But these challenges, they're part of God's plan in our life. Like the country song says, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plan, right? Yeah, because all these challenges are placed here by God because according to his plan, not ours. So if we trust in the Lord to be by our side, we can make it through any of these headwinds in our lives. So I love to sail. I love to get out on the ocean and sail. And all the stops along my life and in my career, I've had a number of them I had the opportunity to sail. One, I was crewing a racing sailboat. Others, I just sail for pleasure. And so, as you know, when you sail, you're dependent on the wind. Now, if you're trying to go sail from point A to point B and the wind is directly at your back, no problem. You put the sheets out or the sails out, you put a big spinnaker up maybe, and you just ride with the wind. The only thing you really need to do is kind of look out front to make sure you're not going to hit nobody or you're heading in the right direction, but you have a tailwind, you just ride with the wind. Now, when it's time to turn around and come home, you can't sail directly into a headwind. You got to kind of work at it, right? So what you do is you take a tack, you take a line that you meet the headwind at an angle. You bring the sail to a certain spot where it maximizes that wind. You look up and there's streamers and you make sure that the sail's trimmed out. You maybe heel over and you're gone. It's fun. You maximize that wind. But if you're heading this way and your destination is this way, you just can't keep going that way. So you have to take a tack. So you turn, you take another tack. Same thing. You find out where the wind is, you maximize the sail, you heel over, and you take off. And maybe the ocean's coming over the side of the boat, and you're leaning, and it's fun. And so then you have to tack again. And you wind up zigzagging your way all the way back home. See, you have to work to sail against a headwind. You just can't kick back. Now, it's fun, but you have to work to sail against the headwind. What do we do when we face the headwinds in our lives? Do we try to go it on our own? Do we worry? Do we stress out so much that we make ourselves sick? Do we maybe turn to addictions? Do we eat a lot of ice cream and get fat? What do we do to face these challenges? You see, all those things we do when we face it alone. When we know we should be calling on God to help us out. Trust in the Lord, and he will get you through these challenges of your lives. Now, I love today's Bible verse. So I recall the first time I remember hearing this and understanding it was way when I was a kid. I don't know if you recall, but in the summertime for a week, at the same time every night, there was the Billy Graham revival that would come on the TV. And I remember our family sitting around the TV in Louisiana watching the Billy Graham revival. And this is the first time I remember this verse. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord. And it goes on to say, when you are anxious, when you're facing challenges, go to God in prayer. Let your request be known to God, and the peace that surpasses all understanding will guard your heart. Go to the Lord in prayer. Tell him the challenges, and you will receive peace. It's just like in the hymn we sang. Sorry, just like in the hymn we sang. And since he bids me seek his face, believe in his word and trust his grace, I'll cast upon him my every care and wait for thee, sweet hour of prayer. Sweet hour of prayer. Go to God in your sweet hour of prayer, cast upon him your every care, and you will receive the peace that surpasses all understanding. Now, with a young lady growing up, all she wanted to do was be a writer, to be an author, from the earliest she can remember. So she set out, even as a young girl, writing little stories, and that was her passion. But she faced a number of challenges. She grew up in a poor home where it was a struggle just to make ends meet. And at one point, her parents divorced. Now she is living with her mom, and she's struggling to make ends meet, but she persevered. She kept driving at her dream, at her desire to be an author. When she was 15, her mother got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So now, not a lot of money, single parent, and having to be a caregiver. She said her teenage years were dreadful, but she persevered. She kept pushing for her dream, so much so she got into a university, and she made it through a university. After that, she got married, had a child, and soon thereafter got divorced. So now she's a single mom, struggling to get by, but she still kept her dream alive. She got a number of jobs along the way. She said she loved being a secretary, but she wasn't very good at it. She liked being a secretary because, she wasn't very good because she didn't really like listening to what the boss had to say. She didn't like taking notes in meetings or running calendars. What she did like was when nobody was looking, she'd get on the computer and she would write. And all these stories that she had in her mind, she would write. She would piece together the little pieces of the stories that she had developed along the way. But soon she found herself out of a job. She was unemployed, single mom, on welfare, trying to make ends meet. She kept going. At one point, she would hop coffee shop to coffee shop to coffee shop with her daughter sitting by her side, just writing, piecing together these stories. So eventually, she got together a manuscript, and she submitted it to a publisher. Denied. Another one, denied, but she kept going. Finally, she found a publisher that would publish her story, but only 500 copies. They instantly sold out, began widespread publish, and her book and books became a huge success. Her name is J.K. Rowling, and the books that she wrote, the Harry Potter series. She persevered. She kept going and became a huge success. And you have to believe this is part of God's plan because of the joy that her stories have brought to so many people. She persevered. It reminds me of one of my favorite Bible verses, and it's James chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the man who perseveres, because when he stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised those who love him. Persevere. Because if you do, God will provide you the crown of life that he promised us all. There's a gentleman named Todd Durkin. So Todd was a fitness specialist, but he turned to be a motivational speaker. In one of his speaking series, he talked about overcoming challenges. So he was going through a 6-step or whatnot, but one of the steps about overcoming challenge was this. He said, when the pressure seems so great, when you just can't, you feel like you're walking in quicksand and you just don't know how to act, when you are stuck in a rut, one thing to do is to step back and to give back. When things aren't going right, go left. Do something different. He suggests if you give, just to give back, to give, and you will receive blessings back just because you took yourself out of this hole you were in and you decided to give back. So about 10 years now, almost to the date, 10 years now, because I'm going to talk this way because my kids are sitting over here. I want to get emotional. So about 10 years ago, my son was 8, my daughter was 4, and we were living in Northern Virginia, and we were out on a bike ride. So we lived close to George Washington's Mount Vernon estate. Beautiful. So we rode down to the Mount Vernon estate, and now we're riding back. And so we're on a neighborhood road. We had a little turning lane, and we were going to turn, but for whatever reason, my son felt threatened from an oncoming SUV. So he made it off the road onto the sidewalk, but for whatever reason, the driver could not seem to avoid him, and the driver hit him. Ian went underneath the vehicle, got caught underneath the vehicle, and he was dragged for 80 feet before the driver could finally come to a stop. So I instantly dropped the bike, and my daughter, she left her in the middle of the road, dropped the bike and ran to go dive under the SUV to get him out. Now, what I discovered is he had been caught by shorts, and that's what kept him dragged for 80 feet, but it also kept him directly underneath the vehicle and not out the side where maybe he would have met a wheel, and that could have been a total different story. So I pulled him out. I had to pull him out of his shorts to get out. And I pull him out, and I'm holding him, and he's screaming, and he's bloody. And I hear 911 going on up here, and I hear sirens, the fire department, and the ambulances are coming. And I'm holding him, and I'm trying to comfort him, and I realize he is still wearing the bicycle helmet. Now, it's ripped to shreds. It has a cut right down the middle. A lot of the foam was gone, but the bicycle helmet he was still wearing it as advertised to protect his head. So we took a live flight to a hospital where we went to a pediatric ICU, and he was in the ICU for a week. His injuries were a slightly fracture to his skull, exactly where the crack in the helmet was, a fractured pelvis, and a lot of road rash. But that boy wanted to get better. So eventually, we left the ICU. We went home, and we kept continuing going through therapy. We were surrounded by the grace of our church and our friends to help us out, and in the prayers. And Ian kept getting better. One day, I'm in the kitchen, and I was startled, and I turned around, and he walked in. I'm like, "You're not supposed to be walking," but boy, he wanted to get better. But all along he was getting better, I felt this guilt, like it was my fault for putting him in that situation. So I was dealing with this. So several months later, our kids' aunts, Aunt Janet and Kathy, who are with us online today, came in to visit. And we were talking about how fortunate we are to have him. Because we know, but for angels, that helmet, dang it, for angels underneath that vehicle and the helmet, he wouldn't be here today. So we decided to give back. How could we give back? So we came up with a plan to form a foundation dedicated to bicycle safety, the proper use of helmet, to teach kids the right way to ride bikes. And Jan took off with that, and to date, we have reached about over 11,000 kids and parents to share the message of Ian and the message of bicycle safety and helmet safety. See, in our deepest, darkest time where we were challenged and it felt like everything was on us, we gave back, and 11,000 times we have received the blessings of just giving back. So when we face the challenges here, the challenges of our world, think about giving back. Now, Candace is going to pat me on the back because this is an advertisement, but I'm going to tell you, if this church is so vibrant, this is an amazing church. We have so many ways that allows us to give back, whether it's a committee or Sunday school or the flea market coming up, with so many ways for us to give back. When you feel like you're walking into quicksand, like you're stuck in a rut, think about giving back, and you will receive blessings. Okay, one more story, I promise. So I grew up in a little town in Louisiana called Natchitoches, Louisiana. And we had an amazing Methodist church. It was one of those churches where you become a lifetime member. So no matter where I went across the world, I'd come back and step right in. I'm a lifetime member of that church. And part of it was we just developed the sense of love, the sense of community amongst the families in that church. We had the families, we had the Bernards were in the pew right here. Then this was the Beardens pew. Then the Browns pew was right behind us. The Brazils pew was right over there. And just to prove that it wasn't a congregation of bees, the Galloways were over here and the Thomases were over here. And it's this group of families that we formed this bond of love. So every Sunday, well, not every Sunday. So if the Dallas Cowboys were playing the 12 o'clock game, the preacher would end early. We'd go home and eat fried chicken and watch the Dallas Cowboys. But other than that, every Sunday, we would leave the sanctuary, either in the narthex or out front. The families would just sit there and we would congregate and we share and we would love and we form this amazing community of love. Now, that was drawn upon several times across our lives. At one point, one of the families, the daughter was in college, and she was in an automobile accident and lost several fingers on one hand. You can bet that community just surrounded that family to support. We, at one point, one of the family's teenage boys, happened to be my little brother's best friend, was killed in a ski accident. And you can bet, boy, did we surround that family with love. Then over the years later, my mom was battling cancer for 3 years, and every step of the way of that battle, that church supported her. And when she eventually died, the church supported us. And then when my father was sick and he passed, they supported us. See, it was that sense of community, that love that we found that helped us out in every challenge that we met in our lives. So, I walk through those doors into this place, and I see the faces, and you can just feel the love here. And I paint this picture in my mind. I have love in my heart. And that love goes from my heart to his heart, to her heart, to hers, to his, to Vale, to our friends online. And it weaves this net, this safety net of love that if we fall, it's there to catch us. See, we have this community of love, this body of Christ right here. So when we face the challenges in this world, all we have to do is turn to each other, because this love can get us through any challenge that we face. All right, so hang on. I'm going to tie it up right now. Ready? All right. We have so many challenges that we face in our life, daily challenges, unforeseen challenges. But we know that right here, we have a place of love that we can depend upon each other to help each other through any challenge that we may face. We know that if you give back, even in the smallest way, give back, you will receive blessings and blessings tenfold just for the simple act of giving back. Persevere through those challenges, and you will receive the crown of life that God promised us. Rejoice in the Lord. Go to the Lord in prayer, and you, in your sweet hour of prayer, and you will receive peace that surpasses all understanding. So here in a minute, we're going to stand up. We're going to hold hands. We're going to sing shalom. And we're going to pass peace as we're listening to Raymond play beautiful music. We're going to pass the peace on our way out. We're going to congregate, and we're going to feel that love of this family. But you got to go. You're going to go back out in the world. You're going to face the challenges. You have a place here with love that will help you. Give back, and you will receive blessings. Persevere, and you will receive the crown. And go to God in prayer, and you will receive peace. And God will be with you every step of the way, propelling you through the headwinds in your life. Amen.